Greetings, Poe fans. Welcome to another edition of Poe Unplugged. I am Carmen Bolden.
And I am Jeannie Smith, and we are
The Poetastic Two.
Come zoom with us into the Unbook Club dedicated to the works of Mr. Edgar Allan Poe.
Good evening, Poe fans and Poe Unplugged people. We are going to discuss some words with a mummy this evening. Jeannie, any thoughts before we get started?
No, I think I'm going to hold those thoughts in for right now because let me just tell you, this one was a doozy.
It's chock full with a lot of things. I had read it before a while ago, and I had kind of forgotten a little bit of it. But anyway, so we have special guests on this evening, the Creature Preachers. So Greg and Garrick, do you guys want to just say a couple words?
Oh, howdy there.
Hello.
Hey, so we're coming from different locations this time. So
okay, no problem.
Y'all caught me making cornbread.
Oh, yum. We're coming to your house next.
Dang, he made cornbread. I'm there. Let's go.
All right. And so to get us started, I'm going to share my screen and play one of their songs. Give me just a moment to share my screen. And if it's going to, Jeannie and I were testing this before you guys got on, and it was being a little bit challenging, but we got it to work. All right. So here is the Mummy's. Started from the beginning. We were testing this earlier, but I think it's very fitting for tonight's discussion. So while it's playing, it's a minute and 37 seconds, so we can go ahead and kind of get started, and I'll stop sharing my screen. So does anybody want to start the discussion, or do you want me to?
I think we should wait until this is over.
Okay. I can just picture the mummy like twisting. It's kind of in my brain.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yes. Oh. Make sure that stopped. Okay. All right. I'll stop sharing. Okay. Anybody want to start the discussion on some words with a mummy?
Well, I do want to start one thing before we start talking about the story. Greg, the other day,
yes, ma'am.
We were talking, and you said that you originally started on drums. Was that you on drums, or was that the other guy that's part of your band now?
Oh no, that's me. So yeah, me and Garrett do 100% of it when it comes to recording. And so on I think every song on that EP, I'm playing drums, and then on that particular song, Garrett is playing, I think, guitar, bass, and keyboard.
That's right. No. That was you on bass because it was so good.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah, I'm bass and drums on that one. You were keys and guitar.
That's right.
Very cool. Well, I want to say that the first thing that sent me to when I started hearing it, and I don't know if anybody else may have watched this, but I used to love to watch Beach Blanket Bingo with Annette Funicello and Frankie Avalon.
Yes.
And while that was playing, all I could think was when they're in that bar and the music playing in the background, because that is the motif that it immediately sent me to. was them and the twist and the beach. And so, yeah, the goth surf band, or excuse me, horror surf band, definitely fits. So, very good job. All right,
Well,
now
thank you.
I
on
agree, and
to
I
the
just want to add too, Jenny. You got to add the mummies on the beach,
yes, yes, yeah, the mummies on the beach because
and
they got
Will says, "I just love that surf rock Indian sound, spooky and sexy." Totally agree.
yep, yep,
All right,
absolutely.
Jenny.
All right, mummies. I want to say first and foremost that by far I did not like this story, and I've never liked this story.
Okay.
And I don't know why, because it just, to me, out of all the stories I've read of Edgar's so far, this one throws me so far off left field that I don't even picture him being the writer. I guess that's
Mhm.
why it is, because I get so, and it's not even about the story itself, because I can see, because to me, when I'm reading it, it's got one of those moments where you have to go, like what was, what was he smoking? What was he using for this Welsh rabbit? Or, did he drink too much of that stout or whatever? But at the same time, I'm going, in some places I can definitely see his writing, but for the most part, this story was just, it was so chunky, I guess is the word I'm going for. Because it really didn't give me the flow, the Edgar Allan Poe flow. And the mummy, really, his name, all a mistake, really. I'm
Well, it's
like, okay.
satire. Come on, Jenny. It's satire.
I know, but I'm going, oh yeah. So you're telling me this is all a mistake. So I'm thinking, yeah, words with a mummy, I can get behind that. However, I did like the very last part where it said that, he was wondering who was going to be president in 2045 because he wanted to be mummified so he could come back. And I'm thinking, no, you don't. No, you don't. You're
Well,
good.
we
But
haven't made it to 2045 yet, so we've got a little time to hopefully get some things right.
true. But, it had the staples. I'm gonna go ahead out there. It had the staples of the religion in there for Poe. However, when they were dressing the mummy and the doctor was giving him clothes to wear, I was going, um, hmm, why did he give him whiskers? He gave him whiskers? Did he just have them laying around? It's like, oh, here, have some whiskers to wear. Well, what? Because I wasn't thinking about, the sideburn thing. I was thinking about cat whiskers going, dude, he's got like a, cat nose with some whiskers and a weird hat with no brim. This dude looks weird. Okay, so the first thing I really wanted to do, I'm thinking I need to be high to read this story because I'm missing something. So, and those are my takes. So run with them. Go.
Well, it is funny that Count Alamastachio has a name that is all a mistake except for an O at the end,
Mhm.
presaging how DC Comics named characters with an O at the end, like Metamorpho, Eclipso, Starro.
Um,
But I think that um, all a mistake perhaps refers to first the unreliable narrator. You know,
Mm-hmm.
agree.
he has eaten too much and drunk too much, and probably this is a dream because when the mummy wakes up and kicks his leg and kicks a man out the window down to the second store off the second story to the street, and then the man just gets up and walks back in. That seems like a dream to me because it seems like that the man would have been hurt. And,
Yeah.
and then I think the other meaning of all a mistake is a lot of what the present day people are telling the Count, especially overdressing him in all of those elaborate accoutrements. And then I also thought it was funny how they went and got a copy of the Dial, which was the journal of the Transcendentalists. And
Mm-hmm.
Edgar Allan Poe did not like transcendentalism at all.
No.
Emerson, Thoreau, the Alcott family, and others. And I think there was a vague reference to it in Ligeia that we talked about a month ago. But yeah, so I thought that was funny that they went and got a copy of the Dial to impress him, but that seemed to backfire, at least with the narrator who was telling us the story unreliably, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I thought the alcohol, the sleepiness, the food, and all that made him also an unreliable narrator. The one thing I did like was the galvanism, and that they used electricity to reanimate the mummy, which to me is a nod to Mary Shelley. And so this was written in 1845. Frankenstein came out in 1818. And so I just thought that was a nice nod that Poe gave her, because it has to be, a connection, in my opinion. Anybody thoughts on that?
For
No, I
sure.
had the same.
Oh
I had
yeah.
the same thought.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other thoughts from you guys?
Yeah, I agree. It's with Jeannie that it's kind of impenetrable as reading goes, but it's also kind of classic Poe in terms of, like, thumbing his nose at a lot of stuff, just sort of the transcendentalism. And also it seemed to me like there's just a lot about poking fun at the general hubris of society to, like, well, we know all about this, and so they're applying all their supposedly superior knowledge to all this ancient history, which has no bearing at all. So, and it's sort of a send up, I think, of how much we think we know, and then at the very end, as he's talking about, I just wish I would be mummified for however many years. It's sort of, I think, just a commentary on how little or how much we think we know and how little we actually know at any given time in our development. Anyway, that was sort of my takeaway. But
Yeah, I kind of to piggyback on that. I also thought, because Poe has written several things on science and then science fiction, the balloon hoax, all his tales with mesmerism, and then his actual work of science, Eureka, which he considered one of his greatest works. And it's one of the other, like, nonfiction books, I guess you could say, he wrote. And I've read through it. I don't know if anybody else has, but it's very deep, and you really have to have a very open mind to read it, just because of all the things that he said in it. So I felt like this was a way for him to kind of maybe get back and put some little digs into some of the scientists he didn't agree with as well. Definitely.
Yeah, it's kind of like what Laird was saying, like about like that part where they give the mummy like the wig, kind of like that, like the British like aristocrats used to wear. I mean, I know they still use it in the judicial system today, distinguish themselves. But I kind of thought that was funny. Like, kind of like how silly it is, like they're going to give him like this wig to wear and like the whiskers and everything. But yeah, same thing. This is probably one of my least favorite Edgar Allan Poe stories. And like I reread it yesterday, and I was like having such a hard time. Like I had to keep rereading the last couple parts. I kept like dazing out of it. I'm but the best line for me is at the very end when he just says, actually, part like he's like, oh well, my wife's is true. So that was my favorite part.
Yeah,
I kind of see it almost as a critique. I don't know if it was intended or not, but almost as a critique of kind of imperialism and colonialism.
Yes.
that could
Yes,
definitely be true. Yes, I definitely think so.
I mean,
Yeah, go ahead.
that's one of the reasons why I thought it was so sporadic or splotchy, because of all the different things that he was sticking in there to kind of like stick it in people's faces about how, this is like, yeah, don't like transcendentalism. Definitely think that we are, think we're more superior than we are. Because when they were talking about the different things about the Capitol building and all that, and about how the one thing that got confusing, they said they found this mummy in the hills of Libya, but then he kept thinking he was Egyptian, and I'm going, all right, are we moving on from Libyan to Egyptian? Because I'm like, dude, stick with the program here. We got to be one place or the other. We're not all over it. But I did like how there was like three coffins within one, so that was very much Poe-esque.
Yeah, the Poe
Because
puzzle. I agree.
yeah,
I wrote that as a note.
yeah, the Poe puzzle of taking it out and then finding another one and finding another one. But the one thing that I did with the electricity, because I think it's very unusual when they stuck the thing on his big toe and he gets that kick. Well, that's really not that far off of bodies after they die. Their muscles are still contracting. They're still, even after they're coming out of rigor mortis. So, and some people, they even just sit up on the table. They're completely dead, but their bodies will sit straight up. And so that happening, even though he's supposed to be dead, they're trying to reanimate him. And yes, very much Mary Shelley with Prometheus, man. Um, because you're reanimating a dead body per se.
Hmm.
And I loved how they were talking about how he was a descendant of, oh, I can't pronounce that. Kept wanting to call it,
Scarabaeus.
yeah, I kept wanting to call it succubus, but no, it's a scarabee. Um, so yeah, and that's the ties between the Greeks and the Romans and the Egyptians and all that, history tying into there, and even the Hebrew, talking about the Torah, the Hebrew, the religious part of it too. So
Hmm.
I guess that's why I'm like, it was a hateful, I guess is the word. It was a hateful story. It's like he was really wanting to just, get it all out. So,
That's true. Well, Jeannie, you mentioned religion, and the one it kind of got a little into, creationism versus evolution, but also the scientists or doctors, whatever, were going on about all the different Egyptian gods, and then the mummy, the count, was like, "There's just one." And I thought that was very interesting that Poe kind of did that take on it.
yeah, like he took that polymorph or the whatever.
Polytheism.
Thank you. I, I knew I teach it. I should know it. Yeah, the polytheism, and then he condensed it down to the one,
Hmm.
and it was like, it's 5,000 years ago, so it was before they ever got to, you know, uh, Jesus and all, the Messiah and all that with the Greeks and the Romans and the Hebrew. So it's like, okay, the Greeks had their own mythology. They had their
And
own polytheism going on at the same time. So,
I like that actually. It sort of hinted at without really going into it, the idea that the mummy himself was like, far more intelligent or more advanced or, from a time that, we all take for as primitive, but he was really more civilized than those doctors. So I like how they didn't reveal everything, but I think that piece was sort of part of that, how even spiritually he had it figured out more than they did.
yeah.
I would
Well,
definitely agree.
well, there's even precedent for ancient Egyptian monotheism too. When was it Pharaoh Akhenaten
Yes.
introduced the worship centered around the god Aten.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
it was probably I can imagine a bit inspired by that.
Yeah, I could definitely see that as well. I did a little digging. I always try to dig a little bit more to find out a little bit more about the story or, any influences, before, that Poe had himself on him, and then or influences from the story. And so I came across a website, and it had that there was a movie adaptation of this story, and I was kind of like, I never, yeah, there's been a lot of different mummy movies out there. And so I looked at it, and it's called The Mummy Lives, and it is very loosely based on his story, and it was from 1993. Tony Curtis was the lead actor. Everybody else in it was, I think there was a doctor in it that looked familiar, but I can't, I think his name was like Greg Wrangler, but the girl kind of looked familiar, but when I say loosely based, I watched it this afternoon. In fact, I finished it at like 6:30 tonight. It it starts out, there's four doctors or Egyptologists that are in this tomb that has never been opened before. They don't have him, like, it's not from a mummy from a museum or anything like that. And they're poking around at the mummy. They had just lifted off the top of the sarcophagus, and they make comments like, his stomach, has it's protruded, and they say, well, let's go to the nose, and some things like that. And so that part was kind of authentic to what Poe wrote. But then they take the story. Tony Curtis plays this, I can't remember. He wasn't a pharaoh, but he was like a high, someone in the hierarchy. And he has this affair with the pharaoh's head concubine, our most beloved. And so they catch them in the act. And so they take him and they basically bury him alive, mummifying him. And so they show all this. And so that's where the story is, where the girl, because she's madly in love with him, they are going to come back, and he's going to get revenge on everybody that was robbing the graves and all this kind of stuff. So that's where it goes from there. But when he comes out of the coffin and he's got all the mummification on him, he asks the god, I think they named him, it wasn't Thoth, but I think it was Zoth, to make him back into human form. And so he, of course, is. And so Tony Curtis is this now doctor that's an Egyptologist that knows everything about that history. And he is very arrogant, like the mummy. And so he when they'll make comments about things, he'll say, well, this is the right way to do it, and things like that. So I don't necessarily recommend the movie, but if you want to have a little Poe, very little, it's interesting, but it's a very slow moving movie, and the acting is not great. Even Tony Curtis's acting is not as great as in the past. So just wanted to throw that out there, that yes, there is an adaptation.
That would have been nice. I think
That's wild.
I read it like a Mel Brooks movie, because I thought it was pretty funny. Even
Yeah.
though
Very funny. Very
some
funny.
folks didn't quite like it, I like that it was different and
Mhm.
funny. It was almost silly.
Yeah.
There was that part where they were talking about architecture, and that was pretty lengthy. But I lucked out. I think I cheated. I listened to the audiobook.
Okay. I
So
do
that
that
was
sometimes as
good.
well. And if I can find one read by Vincent Price, that's what I do, especially
Absolutely.
because, it's so good.
Yeah,
But
I read it last Thursday night in this book, but
gotcha.
then last night I looked on YouTube and listened to a man read the story. It took about 41 minutes.
Mhm.
I don't know who the person was. It was, I think, the first one on YouTube, but it was very good. So I enjoyed reading it and then refreshing my memory by listening to it.
Mhm. Yeah, I do. I enjoy listening, especially if it's a good narrator. Absolutely.
I left my copy of the book somewhere. I don't know where it
Yeah.
is, but there was one line that just I cracked up as I read it. It was talking about they were trying to describe what a politician was to the mummy, and he
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
understand until they described him as like this carbuncular fat guy with his hand shaking a finger. It's just like, yeah, with his mouth open. Yes, that was it.
Yeah. Jeff, did you find it in the book? Like,
No, I haven't found it yet, but
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I do remember that. That was hilarious. And then I may find it in just a minute. Yeah, somebody else jump in and talk about anything you liked or didn't like. Jeannie, we'll forgive you for not liking it. It's not one of my favorites, but I do like the satire of it. It's Poe doing satire well, in my opinion.
once I kind of started rolling with it, like I agree, like it was hard to focus and get into it. But then I don't know, somewhere along the way, like that sort of like snotty little like kid voice that he can have sometimes, where he's just like, he's just like a little punk, and when he's writing, he's just like, I don't give a crap about anything. And once I kind of got that aspect of it going, I enjoyed the heck out of it. So
Yeah.
I thought a funny part was when the Count was talking about how the different Egyptian states got together, but then
Yeah.
it turned out to be the most odious and insupportable despotism that was ever heard of upon the face of the earth. I asked what was the name of the usurping tyrant. As well as the Count could recollect, it was mob. So
Yes.
Poe is talking about mob rule and mob violence.
Yeah.
Well,
And
there was also the symbolism about it being the 13, talking about the 13 colonies and the, coming together of the, trying to get rid of the the tyranny of the king. So I saw all his little snippets in there and his digs. I mean, those were all very out there and they were very much of Poe. And it's not that I didn't see Poe. It's just that it just took too much time. And by the time I got to it, I'm like, I could have done without like the whole first half of the story. It's just me. I'm like,
yeah.
okay.
I get it, totally get it. Yeah.
Yeah. I do too. I definitely do. I'm having trouble finding that line. The one thing to me too was, they're doing all this stuff, and then it's like out of nowhere that they decide to, put electricity to the mummy, and it's like kind of like Jeff, what you said with the dream theory behind this. It's like, that kind of makes sense because a dream, you kind of go from different things here and there, and they don't make connections always, because it was just out of nowhere, like, hey, let's electrify this guy, and see what happens. And so then you kind of wonder, okay, had they been drinking, if this was, true to life, had they been drinking as well, because it is very late at night,
100%
and
they were drinking, yes.
yeah, had to be. But Will says, kind of going back to the with the politicians, or as if the only way to describe a politician was to make a crude caveman drawing of them. Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, and in other stories that Poe has, especially his satires, he definitely makes digs at a lot of different politicians. Um, King Pest is another one that we're eventually going to read down the road. But there is an Andrew Jackson, because we're from Tennessee. There's an Andrew Jackson character in that, and so it's very interesting.
Well, and he does make the connection. He does mention Mesmer in here. So
Hmm.
that kind of gives its way towards it being kind of a made up Salvador Dali, clock melting type of story. And
Hmm.
another thing is I'm like, why are you calling a mummy a count? Because as far as I know, count was not in their history of being, referred to as anything. So that was another thing going, okay, maybe not the same here, something he's making up.
Yeah, I didn't get that either, but I assume whenever I don't get something, I'm just missing a reference that's in there somewhere but yeah, that seemed off to me.
Yeah, that name. I mean, I even went back and tried to look to see maybe because some of those I tried to skim, and I'm like Holly, I had to keep going back and rereading a few things, and I'm like you, I kept going back to see did I miss something? Why is he being called a count and not being referred to as something whatever their higher ups like the pharaoh or the
Hmm.
some of the other things that they were in Egyptian times. So it
Does
was
any
just.
I mean, I assume they were just giving him a generic kind of aristocratic name that they could wrap their heads around.
Yeah, and it's very English too. So
Mhm.
Hmm.
that would be the other thing, and that lays to the whole thing of it not being true to form. How, the mummy's supposed to be talking Egyptian, but only one of the group actually understands Egyptian
Mhm.
and is translating to a certain degree, but then after he finally becomes completely animated, he no longer gets to be translated. He starts speaking like them. So it's kind of where they start understanding him better, I guess is the way I want to say it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I thought one of the funniest parts too was, it's like they're trying to stump him saying that, this thing is better than Egypt and anybody else, and they just kept going on. And then it was I can't find the line, but I'm in kind of the section, but Dr. Ponener, it's like the narrator's like he's going to, he didn't say stump, but he's going to really get him with, and then it was about the whole dressing aspect, and that I thought that was hilarious, that it's like you're doing all these scientific things, architecture, but then dressing, fashion is going to be what really gets him. But then what is the ultimate that he finally is kind of like, he puts his head down, is when they talk about Ponener's lozenges or Brandreth's pills. And I read a little article earlier today that someone had done their master's thesis on post science, and he says that Brandreth's pills are a laxative, which I could see that for that time, and so that made it even funnier. That he had done some of the research on that, and so I cracked up laughing when I read that.
That's great.
Yeah. So it's, again, Poe had great humor, very, punny, and sometimes in your face, sometimes very subtle, but just, I think hilarious.
Yeah, he had his moments.
Yes. Jeannie,
I
it's
didn't.
okay.
Yeah, I know. I'm just.
No,
Jean
but
is not feeling it tonight.
yeah,
No.
and that's cool because, you don't have to like everything,
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's why my ninth grade English teacher, um, he made us read Nathaniel Hawthorne's The House of the Seven Gables. We had to read a book every week and do a book report and turn it in on Monday. I got to like page 3 of that book and I couldn't take it anymore. I just couldn't do it. There was nothing about that book that I could get into. So me being yes, and I know many people may not know this about me, the smart ass that I am, or smart aleck. I was even this way when I was in high school. Um, I turned in a paper. It was 1 page. And I said on the line, I said, I can't stand this book. I couldn't get past page 3. And I gave it to him. He gave it back to me. And he said, I don't care if you have to get a friend to read this story to you, tell you about this story, or get the Cliff's Notes, but you're doing this book report on this story. I still to this day hate that book and have never read it and will never read it because I don't know why, but it's kind of like this story, The Words with a Mummy. I'm going, I can, at least now I'm older and I'm like, I can read it. I don't even know if I'd want to go back and even try to read that one. Don't
You
get me wrong.
won't. Don't lie. You won't.
Yeah, I won't. There are some things of Nathaniel Hawthorne's that I do like, but just that one. I even went to Salem and saw the house of the Seven Gables that he wrote that book on, and it still gave me nothing to want to read that book. No, 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 no.
I read it right before I went to Salem, and it just made everything just wonderful.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah, I think, Jeff, were you going to jump in and say something?
Well, earlier we were talking about how there is a great deal of description in this story, and I was going to say it reminded me of Hawthorne and Dickens. the over description and even talking about how he overate and ate too much reminded me of A Christmas Carol. You know, it's a bit of uncooked potato or something.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was in college, we did some radio dramas, and one of them was The House of the Seven Gables. So that was an early engagement of mine with that story. And then I've seen the movie versions. So yeah.
No, I think that's a good point about A Christmas Carol, because I had that same kind of idea, and I think it kind of reinforces the dream interpretation.
Yes.
Yeah. Like all those doctors or, men of science that's standing around the dead body are the actual ghosts in the dream instead of the dead
Yeah.
person being the ghost.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that actually works.
I think, I was saying all a mistake was the narrator and the close, but I think Poe means for us to take the Count's word seriously. What he's saying is not all a mistake, but those are some pointed barbs that Poe wants to get across.
Absolutely. Sure. And again, I also think it's this is throwing in a whole nother thing that, there's lots of theories about Poe based on some of the other things he's written. And in Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym, his only fictional novel, he writes about a character that died from cannibalism. He is cannibalized, and that actual character, the name, there was a real life person with the same name, like I think it was 30 something years later. I think it was like maybe 36 years, that actually was cannibalized. And, Poe wrote this that many years before that happened. And so there's a lot of, speculation, of course, obviously, fictional, that he was a time traveler. And so, it's kind of like, okay, he mentions, what is it, 2045 that he meant? Yeah. It's like, okay, did he go there and he already knows who is president in 2045? And I know it's silly to think about, but I love time travel. And, so that kind of thing is very interesting to just, the what if, that existential thinking of, what's out there. And so that kind of also made me think about that while I was reading it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there will be an election in 2044, and the president will be inaugurated in 2045. So
exactly,
I wonder who she or he will be.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Oh no.
So any other thoughts on this story? The only
I enjoyed it. I always really like it when horror writers get a little silly. Like I love it when Stephen King does it.
Yes.
So yeah, I enjoyed it. And I hadn't read it before, so it was fun.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Is this anybody's first time reading the story? Like you had never read? Okay.
Second time. But
yeah, it was my first.
Okay.
I read it with more intent this time, but I think I glossed over it the first time, probably like Jeannie. I was like, I can't get into this, but this time I was more focused. But and I enjoyed it a lot more this time. But yeah.
Okay. The only other thing I kind of researched, just because I was looking for the, mummy adaptations, of the work, if there was any shorts out there or actual movies. And so I actually also went into just kind of digging, because, Dracula and Frankenstein, when you look at the Universal monster movies from back in the 30s, they had books that they based the movie on. But the actual movie, The Mummy, did not. And basically it was the director told, I can't remember what the guy's name was, go out, find a book, and we're going to make a movie about a mummy. And there wasn't one. And so I was like, please say you found, Poe's story. But they did say something about, and I can't remember which story this is, but one of the Sherlock Holmes stories about a mummy is, there was a little bit of, they read that, but they pretty much just kind of created it. And it was when they made the movie, the hype from King Tut's tomb was still going because that was 1922, and so they kind of used that to piggyback on and kind of took it from there. And so I thought that was really interesting, that the Mummy didn't have a book, and so
and that a plot device of the mummy coming back to our present time and finding a woman who perhaps is the reincarnation of his lost love has been done in so many other movies and TV shows, Dark Shadows and several versions of Dracula. So that has become a staple.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, any other thoughts on the story? Because I was going to ask Greg and Garrick to just kind of talk about the Mummy's Minuet, just kind of where your inspiration for that one came from.
Sure. So that EP that it's off of is called Halloween Hullabaloo, and so we did it specifically to be kind of a Halloween record that we hope people kind of listen to every year, kind of revisit. And so almost every song on that EP is kind of named after. So we have Creep from the Deep, which is kind of a creature from the Black Lagoon. We have Mr. Hyde's New Ride, which is Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. So for this one, we were like, okay, we'll do one on the Mummy. So that main riff, is kind of a Middle Eastern scale in A minor. And so I wrote that part, that main riff, and I almost accidentally, I guess I started writing it. I'm like, oh, that really sounds kind of cool and Egyptian, and then like, okay, that'll be our Mummy song. And then so the middle section, I think that was Garrick, you wrote that part, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was the part that we went. I think it's kind of a Pixies riff. If you're familiar with the Pixies, what they like to do is they'll play chords, but they'll interchange whether the chord is major or minor, and that to me makes the song. You can make a pretty bland chord progression extra spicy if you make one or a few of those chords minor where they were major. So this whole song is in an A minor, and that part B was just sort of like that dragging kind of riff, and then ends on an A major, and then it changes to A minor.
Which that's one of your favorite moves here, to go from
I
major to minor and back and forth.
Well, it's an awesome song.
Thank you.
Well, how long have you guys been playing together?
So this project is about 3 years old.
But you guys play a lot of live acts or live sets, or
oh yeah, this past weekend we did.
Yeah, we try to because with our work schedules and everything, we try to stick to like about one show a month. But we just played a show, which we were talking on the podcast last time. We just played a show in Pinehurst, North Carolina. So we just got back from that. So that was a fun trip.
So that's cool. So you do a lot of touring, or?
Not really. We most of our shows are either Atlanta, Savannah, or Athens, kind of that triangle. Where we are locally, there's just not a whole lot of places for original acts in general, but especially for what we do. I feel like it's so kind of niche. And everywhere around here, you either you pretty much have to be a cover band, and you have to play like 3 hours, and we don't want to do either of those. So we end up usually playing most of our shows in Atlanta with 2 or 3 other bands, and that's kind of our comfort zone.
Cool.
Yeah, that makes sense. I met them at a tiki event back in January, and actually met them. I met them, their wives first, because we were doing a crafting little class together, and then my husband, I think, had met either one of you guys or one of your wives, I can't remember, when he was getting like a cocktail or something. And so then we went by their booth and talked, and it's like, we're going to have you on the show eventually. And so we made it happen. So we were
Yeah, it
excited
took a little
about
while,
that.
but we made it happen.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, so we were like, this is, their music fits perfectly with Poe. And the episode just came out, so definitely take a listen. We were going to play one more song. We thought that Reanimate was another one that they have that would fit perfectly with
Mommy.
yes, thank you. Hold on just a moment. We'll play this one. Let's talk about that for just a minute, and then we'll wrap things up. Okay. Okay, I think that stopped. So
Okay, I really love that one too. However, I will
Thank
say
you.
that my cat kind of had a reaction. She was doing okay until you got to that, I don't remember what part it was. It went from drums to like I think straight into just guitar, maybe.
Oh, it's the lead part. Okay,
Probably when
cool.
that, yeah, when that's
Yeah.
the lead guitar
She
Yeah.
part came in.
immediately stood straight up, looked at my phone, and had her ears cocked back, going, "What the?" I'm like, "It's
Okay.
okay. You're
All right.
fine."
I'm kind of proud of that now.
yeah, was that Twitter?
Yep, that's Twitter.
Okay, not surprising. You're going to hear about it too because she's a talker.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, so Greg and Garrett, just what inspiration behind that one? Because that one can go with so many different things.
Right. So
Yeah.
that, I guess that one's kind of the Frankenstein inspired song, because we were trying to hit as many of the big horror icons as we could when we did that EP. And so that riff, so you'll notice pretty much all of our riffs are either E minor or A minor. So that one's in E minor, is that main riff, which I wrote that main riff. And then that lead part, that's Garrick, which he wrote, which I love how those two kind of play against each other, which is like we were talking earlier. Those are always my favorite songs of ours, are the ones that when we come together like that. And so I think that's a good example of that.
Yeah, I love that riff. The riff that Greg wrote, it lurches, it's heavy. And the funny thing is it's still surf. I think we really struck a balance with that song in particular, how, we're not exactly punk rock or we're not exactly surf rock, but somehow that sort of hits both.
Yeah.
It reminds me of like you two as being brothers, because it's like your personalities playing off of each other in your
No,
music.
that's actually a great point. That really is like a perfect example of our two personalities coming together.
Yeah.
and it just meshes, and you don't really see that. I mean, not all siblings share that kind of thing, but after having talked to you guys on the podcast and meeting you guys then and listening to your music, I saw it and heard it more
Hmm.
after meeting you guys and seeing, okay, I can hear, it's like like whenever you can hear the song when the guitar is playing, doesn't matter who actually is singing, if anybody's singing at all, you can still hear it in your mind. And that's kind of like what hit me with your music. I can hear which one of you is doing what.
Well, I love
That's
that.
awesome.
I
Thank
think
you.
I think we're doing our job if that's the case.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Very good.
Well, on the new our new episode, our latest episode, featuring them, their new single called "Haunted Swamp" is on the front and the back end, so you can hear that because they have not released that yet. Correct?
Correct. Yeah. So like
Yes.
I think you guys are kind of the first to have it actually.
Yay! It's really good. It's really good.
Thank you.
So we have enjoyed having you guys on here to join us for some words with a mummy, and
Yes, thank you.
it was a kind of a nice kind of mixed feeling of this story, and I'm sure there's going to be others that other people don't like as well, and that's okay. That's why we have varying opinions and experiences reading literature, which is I think awesome. And so next month, we will go back to our normal last Tuesday of the month. Um, and that's going to be August 29th. And we will be reading The Premature Burial. And we have a special guest for next month. She'll be our Gothic guest, and we'll have an episode with her where we're going to do an interview. Her name is Sharon Pashka, and she has written a book that is coming out, I think, on the 27th of August. Jeannie, does that sound right?
Yes. Sounds
And
right.
she went and visited multiple cemeteries where Poe's grave, obviously, family members of Poe, friends of Poe, teachers of Poe, people that influenced Poe or he influenced, and wrote a book about those experiences going to those graves. And so we were like, the premature burial is the perfect one for her to join in with us. So we're really excited about that. So we hope everybody will be able to join us for that next month, and that'll go up within the next few days on the website. So again, thank you. Anybody have any last minute thoughts?
I just want to say about the music, that is great for a Halloween party. Or like they're
Oh,
doing that
nice.
thing now where they're doing the Halloween summer parties.
Oh,
I've been like
yes.
wanting to do that. The skeletons swimming in the pool. I mean, right on. Very cool.
Oh, that would be awesome, Holly.
Well, Nashville's TV horror host, Dr. Gangrene, hosts a horror hootenanny every October.
Okay.
And you guys would be great as one of the acts at the horror hootenanny. You
All
can
right,
look
we'll
up,
look into
you
that.
can look up my friend Dr. Gangrene on Facebook. His real name is Larry Underwood. You perhaps have seen his show on NECAT, NECAT.org.
Okay.
But yeah, Larry Underwood would enjoy meeting you.
Yeah, the name is familiar, but I'm going to look into that. Thank you for that.
Oh yeah, that would be amazing if you guys could come to our area of the world.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And Will says, thanks, guys, for the music and your insight. And as usual, it's always been a blast. Every time we come together, it's like everybody's got something they can add on
Yes.
and talk about. And I didn't even go dark. I want to say that. I did not go dark on this one.
I think you go dark when you really like it.
Yeah, that's probably true. That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't think of anything to go dark on this one other than just being it just eh. Okay. I mean, I got nothing.
It's
All
all
right.
good. It's all good.
All good.
Thank you guys again, Garrick and Greg, and thanks
Yep,
everybody
thank you.
else for
Thanks,
joining.
everybody.
And we enjoyed it so much. And have a great evening. And we'll see you next month.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Everybody,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.